The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We can be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Is anybody out there? How does one talk to God? A burning question as long as I can remember. I think it started when I was 5, living weekdays with my father's stepmother and her children, and weekends with my grandparents. The grandparents were very religious. Dad and his wife, on the other hand, were anti-religion, considering it judgmental and hypocritical. To say the two factions were polarized against each other was a gross understatement. One Sunday, I was at my grandparents', and a minister uncle was visiting. He was a very large man with a booming voice. I'd always been very leery of him. Grandma was cooking my favorite meal, Southern fried chicken. The smell had tortured me all afternoon. We all sat down to dinner, and Grandma put the plate in front of me with my very favorite portion, a drumstick. Without thinking, I snatched it up and took a bite. Uncle stood up, backhanded me off the chair, and roared something about touching the food before he had led us in prayer. He promptly sent me to bed without dinner. The following Monday, at dinner with my father and his family, I dutifully folded my hands and bowed my head. "Quit being so pious and eat your dinner before it gets cold," stepmother snapped. But I was terrified to eat before someone said grace. Hades would freeze over before either adult uttered a prayer, and I had no clue how to do it myself. I was sent off to bed without supper again. I developed an eating disorder that worsened over time, so Dad sent me to Saudi Arabia to live with my mother and her husband. At 10 years old, I frequented the stables just outside the American encampment and befriended the stable master Abdul, his young wife, and new baby boy. Granted the rare privilege to be in the presence of their new child, I was sitting with Abdul's wife in their tent when the call to prayer came from a nearby prayer tower. I looked outside to see 6 stabled hands kneeling on their prayer rugs facing the same direction, foreheads touching the ground. "Why are they all facing the same direction?" I asked my hostess. "They're praying to Mecca." "Who's Mecca?" "It's the holy city. That's where Allah listens to prayers." "I'll be glad to hold the baby if you want to go pray," I offered. "Oh no, women can't pray. Allah can't hear us because we have no souls." Well, I could only hope Abdul put in a good word for us then. While Mom and Stepdad were devout atheists, my best friend was Catholic. At age 12, I started attending Mass with her. She tried to instruct me on the way things were done. "The priest performs a Mass so God can hear our prayers," she shared. I wanted to talk to God, so I really tried to participate. But it was all Latin to me. In my ignorance, I was left with the impression that God didn't want to hear directly from me, that I needed a go-between if he listened to a girl at all. I was 22 when my Lakota teacher put me out on the hill for my first vision quest. Barefoot and wearing a lodge dress, I had a blanket but no food, water, or shelter of any kind. To say I was a bit trepidatious was an understatement. He secured me in a circle of sage. "Pray for a vision, Wiyaka." He turned to leave me alone for 3 days and 3 nights. "But I don't know how," I protested. "Then pray to learn to pray," and he was gone. I'd never felt so alone. The first day was scorching hot, the night freezing cold. No vision came. Well into the second day, I thought I'd better at least attempt to pray. Is anybody out there?" I ventured. Nothing. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm really sorry. I don't have a clue how to talk to you." Silence. The day wore on, and after numerous failed attempts at contact, I got mad. Don't I deserve God's love? Probably not. How could one insignificant little woman matter to him? when he had the entire universe and beyond to tend to. When night fell, I reflected back on my confusing experiences with prayer and began to cry. The more I cried, the more I remembered, and the more desolate I felt. All of my life, I knew there was a God I so longed to connect, but just didn't know how. I cried myself to sleep and woke the next day with an amazing feeling of peace. A gentle breeze caressed my face as I watched the sunrise ignite the sky. There you are, I marveled. You've been here all along. Our guest this hour is Rick Hamlin, has written a wonderful book on prayer I could have used back then. I'll introduce Rick and his body of work after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Rick Hamlin, the executive editor of Guideposts, where he's worked for 25 years. His book on prayer, 10 Prayers You Can't Live Without, was published in the spring of 2013. Rick's memoir, Finding God on the A Train, was a Book of the Month Club alternative selection. He's also published 3 novels, most recently Reading Between the Lines. He's been a contributor to Daily Guideposts since 1985 and blogs about prayer at guideposts.org. His wife, Carol, live in New York City, where both sing in their church choir. They're the parents of 2 grown boys. His website, www.guideposts.org. Rick, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Hi. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. This might seem rudimentary, but what a place to start. Would you define prayer for me?
I think prayer is connection. That's the first word that comes to mind. And prayer is reaching out. I also, listening to your story, I thought, gosh, that poor girl. Why didn't just somebody say, hey? All you have to do is just say, hey. That's it.
So how did you learn to pray, Rick? Did you grow up knowing how, or did you struggle like I did?
Well, I did have a pretty good model with my father. My father, we talked about, you had that story about saying grace. My father said grace every night. I was one of 4 kids. And they were rambling graces. He just would sort of kitchen sink sort of graces. One of our friends used to call him the 6 o'clock news. He would just put in anything there. And it was actually instructive, because I do feel that sometimes we think we need to edit what we're going to say to God, which is kind of loony, because if God is God, God knows everything we're thinking anyway. So why are we trying to edit it and frame it in such beautiful language? So I think there's such a thing as silent prayer, but there's also such a thing as just talking and saying what's on your mind, saying what's on your heart.
What do you think are the greatest misconceptions about prayer?
That it may be that it's highfalutin, that it requires special procedures, special languages. That it's special. It is, of course, special, but it's for only special people. Well, we're all special people. I remember when I was a 14-year-old, and I got up and I said a prayer at our church, and it started out with "Hi God," and there was some little rustle through the congregation. But when I think about it, that's a pretty authentic prayer. I say hi to you when I talk to you on the phone. I say hi to somebody I meet at the store. So saying "Hi God" is a great place to start.
So we tend to take ourselves too seriously when we pray. Is that what you're kind of getting to?
Well, I think we do, and I can get stuck that way. Often, it's the crisis moments in our life that put us on a prayer journey. We're feeling lost. We're struggling through something. It might be a health crisis, a family matter, financial concerns. And then there's sort of a loud scream, which is, trying to get attention. But there is some authenticity to that because you're communicating raw emotion. If you're with a friend and your friend is angry at you, you want your friend to say how he feels. Similarly, if you're trying to forge a relationship with the divine, you should be completely honest. If you're angry, let God know.
That's difficult for most people, though, isn't it? It's like it feels kind of like it really exposes you. Like maybe you should approach with something a little more palatable.
It's interesting that it might be difficult. Palatable. You mean something that's sort of nice language, or you mean sort of when you say palatable, it sounds like a tea party to me.
Well, some prayer groups are a little bit like that. It's like what I've seen over the years is there's so much a ceremony around prayer that people have lost their comfort with it. They don't feel comfortable showing raw emotion. They don't feel comfortable being desperate or being honest. It's like you have to kind of approach it with your best Sunday dress on.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Psalms are a pretty good model. They're at times quite raw. Some of the language is violent. The emotions of expression are pretty strong. I think it's perfectly fine to sort of to turn to something that's been printed already and use that to get your language going. If you're having problems finding language, if you're having problems to identify what you want to say, but I look at the Psalms as a model for real honesty. Revealing your sense of inadequacy, revealing your anger, revealing I was reading a psalm today, and the psalmist says, "I'm falling, I'm in pain." That's pretty authentic, and that's the kind of conversations I feel gratified when I can have with someone else.
I'm with you there, and I love the Psalms. It seems like there's two real different styles here, but maybe there's a place for both, and maybe you can help me with this. There's the style of just sitting down and having a conversation with God, if you will, like you would with your father or something. And then there's a style of coming with this beautiful formal prayer forms that have been repeated in a devout way for generations, and that also has its value. Would you speak to that?
Those beautiful forms, of course, they have their value, but they shouldn't become so formalized that they're, in a little window, that they're museum pieces. I mean, they come from humans like us, and just if the language might seem more formal, but the emotional content is completely authentic. there are also, we should, there are all kinds of moments of prayer. Like there are all kinds of moments in our life. There are moments of celebration. There are moments of joy. There are moments of gratitude. And then there are moments of pain and sorrow. So to limit it to just one kind of prayer, it seems to be limiting ourselves.
I would agree with that. So I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. Do we really need a go-between to have our prayers heard?
I don't think so. Sometimes if it feels better for you, we use Jesus as a go-between, but then Jesus is also God. So how is he, speaking to Jesus is also speaking directly to God. For my language, I usually, if there's a name, it's sometimes Christ. But sometimes there is silence. The prayer of silence and just, holding an image in your head, can also be a wonderful way to sort of feel yourself spiritually connected.
One of the places that I personally, just probably because it's the way I'm wired, really feel the most connected with God is when I'm out in nature. Is that contraindicated to pray to God through nature?
Oh, that's a wonderful way to pray. I think nature speaks to us. I don't think you have to go too far to find nature either. I live here in New York City. 8 million people right here, and to step out into the sunshine on a beautiful day like it is today, to just see the wind blow through the trees, to see the light on the leaves, those are certainly ways of connecting. Of course, if you have the advantages of visiting Yosemite National Park or some really profound places, because God certainly speaks through the universe that God has created.
It's a beautiful way of communion, isn't it? And I think we overlook it a lot. Do you see prayer as having changed over the last years? And if so, why do you think that's the case?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I'm going to say, do you see prayer as having changed much over the last years? And if so, why do you think that's the case?
For me personally, or for others?
Both, in general, for one.
I think in my personal prayer journey, I have grown and looked for different kinds of prayer. I keep mentioning, silent prayer, which is, I came up with this sort of a metaphor for trying to figure out what I'm doing when I'm praying. And you know how on our computers you sort of drag and drop? You have to drag something and drop it into a file. And I thought, oh yeah, that's sort of what happens when I'm praying. It's like I'm dragging all these worries, concerns, and dragging them into a big God folder and dropping them there. And then dropping means letting go, just letting go in that process. So I would say that all of us the exciting thing about prayer is that, you're constantly growing, you're constantly trying new things, you're constantly just feeling yourself getting in touch in new ways. I think it's something that we can, keep growing in a practice of prayer for a long time, for decades.
So it's kind of an evolving thing for the individual as well as the culture?
That's interesting to think that it's an evolving thing for the culture. Maybe our culture has become more open to, there's so much about meditation now. Meditation is something, Silicon Valley, recommends its employees do. It has, benefits for the workplace. Well, obviously meditation has, huge benefits in a prayer life. So I think that language has opened some people up, and I think the value is hearing something and say, "Wow, I could try that."
That's amazing. Our special guest this hour is Rick Hamlin. He's the executive director of editor of Guideposts and author of many fine books, including Find God on the A Train. We're going to take a little break here, and we'll return to our discussion on prayer after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. If you want to hear more, previous broadcasts of innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. Visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Rick Hamlin, the executive editor of Guideposts and author of many fine books, including Finding God on the A-Train, Reading Between the Lines, and Tiered Prayers You Can't Live Without. His website, www.guideposts.org. Rick, there's one thing that I observed in my Lakota teacher, and he was a devout Christian, but he also had something that he did with the way he handled things, with the way that he lived his life. If I had to describe it, it was like his life was a living prayer. Everything he picked up, he did it with reverence. Can you speak to how we can bring prayer into our daily activities?
It's a great challenge. I mean, we often think, oh, yes, it would be so easy, if I'm out in the wilderness, then I could bring prayer into my daily life. But a lot of us are stuck in an office, driving in a car. There's so many things. And how do I bring prayer here? I love having just a little phrase that I can use. There's the Jesus prayer that's just really short, and you can use it in any situation.
Well, can you share it?
Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Sometimes I expand it. Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. A sinner. It's sometimes called the sinner's prayer. And then you can go into any little phrase of guidance. But I like just Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, or sometimes just to say the word Jesus.
That is a prayer, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Probably the most powerful one out there. Do you see there?
But you could be in an office. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What?
No, go right ahead.
Well, I mean, you can be in an office, you can be in a situation that's a conference room, and there may be some tension going on in a meeting, and you can be saying that prayer, and no one has to notice it, but you notice it, and it's the key thing.
So by asking for mercy, how would you define mercy? What's the energy that you're bringing into the situation through that?
That's a good question. I think it's opening yourself up. So much of what we do is holding our fists tight or holding on to things. And if I had to visualize it, mercy would be a gesture of opening my hands up, opening my heart up, opening myself up to receive instead of holding myself tight.
So then what I see in my mind's eye in that conference room where things are getting tense and you say the prayer is you're opening yourself up, and then you become the conduit for mercy to move into the room.
Oh, what a lovely thing. Oh, gosh, I would hope that's true. I've had friends say that. A friend of mine who worked in the movie business, and she remembered, a really tense moment, and, people were kind of pushing their different ideas and getting a little more antagonistic. And what she did, I love this idea, she zapped God's love. She would just look at people and zap God's love. And she said, the conversation would become more creative. People would stop just, arguing their ideas and listen to others. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we did that more often?
I can see the energy at work there, because when we start to argue, we start to polarize. When we start to polarize, we drop our
Yeah.
frequency. But if you bring unity through God's expression into the room, it diffuses the whole thing.
And when we say God's expression in the room, what that says to me is that we are all equals. We are all loved. You are loved. I am loved, and then that person who might be an antagonist becomes a much more interesting being.
So what do you see as the power of prayer? How would you describe that?
Well, I think you're channeling an energy that longs to help you, and instead of fighting the world, you're going with the natural energy of the cosmos, and you're bringing the divine into a life that needs it. We pray for ourselves, but when we do it, you made that point so well, is that we're doing it for others. We're bringing the divine into the life of the people surrounding us.
So being the hand of God, turning yourself over again to the power of the universe, the power of God, and expressing that in every moment. That's a prayer too, isn't it?
Oh, it is so, just generosity. I mean, think when you're behind the wheel of a car. I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes it brings out the worst in me. I get, oh, how dare that person pull in front of me? I'm going to fight. I'm going to get in front of them. Wow, wait, isn't there behavior that is more godly and more prayer-like?
I have to pray when I drive. I'll give you that.
It's funny. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, where's their favorite place to pray? And you'd be surprised how often people say, my car, behind the wheel of my car. Sometimes it's because they're listening to music or they're listening to a good radio station like this. But it's also, I think, a time when they feel alone. There's a little bit of privacy. So praying in behind the wheel of your car, I think it's very good for all of us.
I pray because my driving scares me to death. So,
well, if I'm behind you, maybe I pray too, because your driving scares me.
How important is having clear intent when you pray?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
How important is it to have clear intent when you pray?
It's a wonderful goal, clear intentions to sort of be, to focus on one thing, to will one thing, is quite godly. What I find I do a lot in my prayer practice is letting go of the noise. First, it's hearing the noise and then letting it go. I don't know if it happens to you, but I close my eyes and I think, oh, gosh, I'm going to have some quiet time. And immediately the noise comes in. Oh, wait, there's that email you have to send, and there's the meeting you've got to go to, and have you read that book? And oh my gosh, there's somebody you have to call. They've called you, and you haven't called them back. All that noise in the head. So hearing all that, letting it go to God, and that clears us up for intention.
Does it require faith, or can we believe it when we see it? In other words, when you're praying, in order to see your prayers met, do you have to have the faith?
Oh, we struggle with faith, don't we? I had this lovely thing happen. There was a messenger boy here at the office, and I ended up signing for something, and he looked at me and he paused and he said, "Could you pray for me?" And I said, "Well, sure." And then I said, "What would you like me to pray for?" And he stood there kind of struggling for words, and then he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, is it faith? Are you worried about faith, not having strong enough faith?" And he said, "Oh, no, I have lots of faith. But what I need to have prayer for is less unbelief." Wasn't that lovely?
Oh, that is beautiful. Less unbelief. It seems like to me that faith gives us the ability to see the promptings or the answers to our prayers that we might otherwise miss. Do you view it that way?
Yeah. I mean, Jesus said, "Wherever two or more are gathered, I am there." Now, is that just because there's the energy of more people, two or more gathered in prayer? I also think it's because we find our faith with other people. We see the answers to prayer that we might not observe. We, especially compassionate people who can share the pain that we might be feeling, who can also share our joys. So it's not just the power of two people silently praying, but I think the power of companionship and friendship.
And two people see twice as much, can hold the faith twice as strong, and kind of be the eyes and the support for each other.
Exactly. I mean, it's what I'm getting here from you in this conversation. I answered, oh gosh, radio. I'm trying to be on, but then I hear things from you, and it helps me. So just listening to you is transforming and quite healing for me.
Well, I'm certainly enjoying our time together. We're going to need to take a little break, and we will continue this lovely conversation on the other side. We'll be back on the flip side of this short one. You're listening to The Science of Magic, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. Our website is www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Rick Hamlin, the executive editor of Guideposts and author of many books, including Finding God on the A Train, Reading Between the Lines, and 10 Prayers You Can't Live Without. His website, www.guideposts.org. Rick, before we get much further, would you mind telling us where people can find your books?
10 Prayers You Can't Live Without is easy to get from Amazon. And same with Reading Between the Lines. Finding God on the A Train is by now out of print, but I see it pop up on Amazon. And if you get a copy, send one to me. I'm running out.
I love it. So would you go over the 10 prayers you offer in your book? Just kind of give us a brief idea of what's in there.
Oh gosh, I every time I do this, I'll leave out one or two, and I go, I can't remember where they are. But gratitude is obviously prayer, just being able to say thanks. Singing is a prayer. People in their cars, you sing. Singing helps me connect to the divine, or just humming. And a song, the way it sits in your head, is quite transformative. The hi God, prayer is just conversation. Prayer forgiveness, asking forgiveness. A prayer, a structured prayer like the Lord's Prayer, or the one I mentioned earlier, the Jesus Prayer, Jesus Christ have mercy on me. There's a prayer I like to think of as just yes. There are times when prayer is an action, where you respond positively to something. That's a yes prayer. And gosh, you're going to have to tell me what I've missed. I don't even have the copy of the book in front of me. Otherwise, I'd be thumbing madly through pages.
Don't you love the way we write something and then we can't remember what we wrote?
Yeah, I think we write to forget things rather than remember them. We write them to forget them.
Oh, I like that. That'd be a form of prayer too, then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about divine promptings. It seems like, now this is kind of what I've noticed. If I say a prayer, that's lovely, but if I don't then pay attention to what's happening around me that might facilitate the answer to that prayer, I miss the boat. So how can we recognize, do you believe in that, and how can we recognize divine promptings as they come to us?
In fact, I think one of the nicest prayers to ask yourself every day is Lord, keep me open, open my eyes, let me be open to what service I can do, what your will is, how I can be an answer to prayer, and how my own prayers can be answered. So being open to that. I think spiritual reading helps us, reading the Bible, Scripture, but, inspirational writing, that's a reminder to me of where to look. I think who we surround ourselves with, there are people who are so angry and disheartened, they can cloud our vision sometimes. So, as much as possible, we look for other godly people. That doesn't mean they're only in a church. They're often sometimes just standing in the supermarket line right behind you or in front of you. So the kind of situations we put ourselves in, and also giving yourself some breathing room. It's not push, 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 but it's pause, reflect, take a deep breath, look up at the sky, smell that flower, enjoy life.
So it's like finding your center as frequently as you can helps you stay in the center of your life, and from there you can see the divine as well as the divine promptings. Is that kind of what you're getting to?
Well, that sounds lovely. Yeah, staying with that good person whom God loves and God made, staying with them, so you can hear the angry thoughts and you can let them go. Sometimes just, sitting in a chair and closing your eyes for, 5 seconds. You can't do that when you're driving the car, but that's why I like singing sometimes. Also writing down, when I'm really, really stuck, one of the exercises I find really helpful to feel centered is to write down things I'm grateful for. Just go through a list, and even if I don't physically do it, just start numbering them off. That can be really transformative.
It's funny, I was just going to ask you that as the next question. Gratitude is so hugely important because it transmutes your experience, doesn't it? It can change things we might view as negative into divine intervention.
Yeah. Thank God I'm late for this meeting. Thank God I'm stuck in all this traffic. God let me see. But when somebody says, "Calm down, don't be so anxious," I can't do that. But if I do an exercise like going through what I'm grateful for, it's just even numbering them. I'm grateful for this conversation we're having. I'm grateful for the air conditioning. I'm grateful for the sunshine outside. I'm grateful for the chair I'm sitting in. There's so many things to be grateful for.
And I find that at the end of the day, if I take time to do the gratitude, my whole day is reframed and my next one starts better. Have you experienced that? And do you have any prayers specifically for that?
That's a wonderful way to end your day. No, I usually do it in the middle of the night. I rarely end my day with it, but that's awfully good. That's a great... Let me try that.
It cleans the slate, shall we say.
Yeah.
How do you advise... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. How can we tell when our prayers have been answered? How do you advise people to see the answers coming to them?
One of the things I listen for is sort of a peace of mind in myself. That can be a measure of an answered prayer. I also look to others to see, where kindness comes from. Prayers are not always answered exactly in the way that we dictate. Often the answer comes in a much more interesting way and a bigger blessing that we might expect. But also, I know people who keep prayer journals, and they record an answered prayer. By going through that process of looking for where the answer is, then they find it.
I love that idea of a prayer journal. The God jar where you say your prayers and you write them out on a piece of paper, you throw it in the jar and you turn it upside down. Then you look at it a while later and you see which ones have been answered. It's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes we don't even realize, we're on to the next thing. We can't acknowledge that a prayer, that we've been desperately praying, just a week ago was answered. So, I like the God jar, being able to look back and say, oh my gosh, that thing I was struggling with, it's gone. It's solved.
We have about a minute left. Would you have something you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, just enjoy life and be full of gratitude. And I give thanks to this show, and I give thanks to what you're doing, and I give thanks to all those listeners out there. I hope that we meet each other in any godly, prayerful way.
Meeting in prayer, what a beautiful thought. We know where people can find your books. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. And I can't thank you enough for being on our show. It's enlightening to see the different ways that we can approach prayer, that we can talk to God, just like we talk to each other. And when we're talking to each other, Rick, we're really talking to God, aren't we?
Yeah, we can, as long as we include, the conversation, yeah.
Thank you so, so much. Hope to have you back again sometime, Rick.
Thanks so much.
Our guest this hour has been Rick Hamlin, the executive editor of Guideposts and author of many fine books, including the one we've been talking about today, 10 Prayers You Can't Live Without, his website, www.guideposts.org. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and may your life be a living prayer.